I can shoot scatter with the best of them. Well, welcome back, everybody. I'm still Philip Crum, co-founder of AMP, and that over there is my partner in crime, Kathleen Mills, happens to be a licensed professional counselor supervisor. And good morning, Kathleen.
Good morning. How are you today,
I
sir?
am darn good and marvelous, as Billy Crystal would say, and we're going to cuss and discuss the HHS report. What's that called? Wolves in White Coats. Here in just a little while, we got a couple of characters coming in to help us assess that. And in fact, it's Dr. Dawn Irons and Soad Tabrizi of the Southern California Tabrizis. She'll be here with us. We're waking her up at an ungodly hour, as she put it.
I know it.
She's liable to show up in her little, one-piece bunny outfit and go back to bed when we're done. So don't be surprised, people. You never know with this woman. But, yeah. All right.
Well, the subtitle, just for a minute, Philip, The Wolves in White Coats, is how doctors and hospitals pushed and profited from the fraud of gender medicine. Let that sink in for just a smidge.
Yes, and my thought when I read the subtitle was gender medicine is the specific topic of interest here.
Yes.
But you could draw a line under that and just leave it a blank and fill it in with anything. Read it again and just stop at gender at the end.
How doctors and hospitals pushed and profited from the fraud of...
All right. Does it matter what the fraud was? If the hospitals were doing fraudulent billing, does it matter what the target ailment was? No, it does not. And that's one of the main arguments that the defendants, let's put it this, the targets of this research will claim is that, this is just the administration's, it's additional. This is just part of the Trump administration's effort to do away with gender affirming care. Well, duh.
Well, there's nothing affirming about it when you mutilate humans permanently.
Yeah. So I just, their argument is weak on that point. Is reason I brought that up. I want to point it out. That the gender affirming care is the targeted fraud. They were fraudulent. If gender affirming care had a solid scientific base and they were billing fraudulently anyway, they got a problem. So their argument doesn't hold any water. Here's one thing that I was thinking about last night while I was pondering the world. The FTC versus WPATH case, which is rocking and rolling, has WPATH squarely in its sight. That is a consumer fraud case. Consumer fraud. They're claiming things in order to sell something based on fraud. Doesn't matter what it is. If their claims are fraudulent and they're trying to sell it and make money, they got a problem. The current case, the wolves in white coats issue, brought about by the HHS and through the Department of Justice, that's a medical fraud issue. So we got consumer fraud and medical fraud, two different prongs hitting this whole unscientific gender affirming care issue at the same time. You hit them high, I'll hit them low. That's what's going on here.
Right. All avenues are being addressed.
Yeah. Yep. If the infantry can't get them, the cavalry will. It's the Al Capone approach here. If we can't get him for murder, bootlegging, or any other list of sins he committed, we'll get him for tax evasion.
I like the contributors in this article, Philip. There's some MDs, we know them, Ethan Heim and Quentin Van Meter, who we had at our conference in year 2. And I was really glad that he was part of this paper.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to research anything about this subject, I would start with Quentin Van Meter because he is the expert in this whole thing. And he was in on it from the get-go, not in on it in being deceptive, but he saw what was happening a long time ago in his career. And instead of him quitting, he just kept pursuing right things. And now it looks like, he's getting some vindication finally.
Yeah, he was at Johns Hopkins back when John Money, the original pervert, was at Johns Hopkins. So Quentin stood next to the smoke as it was being fanned and eventually became a flame that we called WPATH.
Right.
And so he knows all about it.
Yep. Make no mistake.
Yeah. I had another thought. It'll come back to me. Well, here's what we're going to do today. When the ladies show up here in just a moment, when we let them in, I want to talk about this report, Wolves in White Coats. And we'll start it, as is my usual custom, we'll start at 30,000 feet and put a frame around this thing before we get the brushes out and the watercolors and start filling in the numbers. And Want to talk about the legal objective of this thing, who and what is affected by these allegations, what are the allegations, and then jump into the juicy evidence. This is where Dawn will shine. She'll be chomping at the bit till we get to question number 5, and
Yes.
and then maybe we can discuss the legal path. You know, what's going to happen here? What's likely to happen? Best guesses, since none of us are attorneys. And then I wanna spend some good quality time pondering what this means for the mental health community. Have you watched there's about a 12, 15-minute video that was released, the HHS released in conjunction with this report. Have you watched that?
I don't believe so, no.
It's essentially they took the executive summary that they put together, a 2-page executive summary, made a video out of it. And it's really pretty good. It's really pretty
Okay.
good. And I started to take some notes. I wanted to know if I wanted to know if the mental health profession was mentioned in this video, and if so, how prominent was it? So it was mentioned within the first 3 minutes. I wrote that down. I thought, okay. And then they mentioned it 3 or 4 more times
Wow.
in this video. So it's
Well, we are at the epicenter, whether somebody wants to believe it or not. I mean,
you know,
we are at ground zero, mental health professionals, in this whole scheme of deception and fraud. Whether you want to believe it or not, you need to read some literature that
mhm.
it's all coming downhill to the professional counselor who gets this process started.
Yep. So when the ladies show up here in just a few months, we'll let them in and then we'll get started on this thing. Does that work for you?
That works for me.
All right, then we'll be right back. All right, we're back. I had to run down to the local hospital maternity ward to find these two. Do I need to explain this or
Oh,
no?
please don't.
Okay. All right, please don't. Please don't. Private joke. All right, so I did find Soad.
Please make sure people know no one's pregnant here. Okay.
Hey, no
No
one's
one.
pregnant here.
Okay,
No one's
thank you.
pregnant. No one here wants to be pregnant.
Okay, thank
Well,
you.
Philip, you might be.
No,
You know,
I'm.
men
It,
can't have
it just
men
look
can't have.
no. It just looks like I'm in my 3rd trimester, but
All
I'm
right,
not.
Did I stop?
I brought it up. Go ahead. I brought it up.
Well, you did bring it up,
I
and you know
did.
you can also breastfeed too.
So again,
I've read the research.
Mm-hmm.
all right. That wit was from Kathleen Mills, LPC-S, and we were joined by Soad Tabrizi, MFT. Are you a supervisor, Soad, or not? I
No,
never
I
can
do
get it
not
straight.
want to be
Okay.
a supervisor
You
now.
don't want the punishment. All right, but Dr. Dawn Irons has signed up for that kind of pressure. She's also an LPC-S out in far west Texas. You go to all the way to the border, you turn left, you spit twice, and she's the 3rd door on the left.
In the
That's
corner.
Dawn. Yep, in the corner. In the corner, we're going to talk about this HHS report, Wolves in White Coats. So since the comic relief isn't working too effectively here, let's just jump right into that. My first question for the lot of you, and we'll let Soad go first since she got up the earliest this morning.
Thank you.
An ungodly hour, as she puts it.
Yes.
We get government reports all the time. We get a new one every week. So why is this report different? What makes this one different, and why? Why does it have weight? What do you think?
So, this is my personal feeling about why it has so much weight. We have been force fed that gender ideology, switching our gender, becoming the opposite sex is very scientific, is very science based. It's people are either born this way. People probably have maybe not enough testosterone, not enough estrogen that makes them feel like they're in the wrong body, that gender dysphoria is actually something that people suffer from, that it's a disease of some sort. And so we are constantly being force-fed this ideology as science, quote unquote. And then this report comes out and basically says, well, we've had to actually lie to make the science true. And that to me is what's the big picture. It's like, wait, if there's science to it, if it's real, like you guys say it's real, why the fraud? Why lie about it so that you can then get reimbursed by insurance to get this kind of treatment that you need? I think for me, that's the big piece, is that we have been sold so much this lie, and the lie has now been transferred to actual fraud. And it's just in front of our face saying, okay, yeah, we we didn't actually have any science behind this. It was just an ideology. And the proof is in the pudding here because we've been lying about how we're actually going to get these treatments. If it was true science, if it was real disease, if it was a real diagnosis, and as we all know, I'm not a fan of the DSM and any of the diagnoses that are in there, but if it was medical purposes, there's no need for the lying. And hospitals, agencies, clinics, clinicians across the board have been lying in order to be able to treat people with quote unquote gender dysphoria. That to me is the big oomph in this whole thing.
Dawn, what do you think? Why is this report getting so much airplay?
100% with where she is. But coming from an academic perspective, I really think it's the first time we've had somebody analyze this where our profession should have, but didn't because they got caught up in the ideology game. This is the first time that there's just like an extreme level of breaking this down and looking at it. How did we get here? They're calling out so much of the research that we see in academia as, that's one piece of the puzzle, but it's not the whole puzzle. And they also call out what I've been pounding that soapbox for years is the suppression of evidence that contradicts the narrative. It exists, but it is suppressed. And so it's not part of the narrative once we get into the training programs and the standards of care. And that's where you start to see, they're truly calling out the emperor has no clothes. And I think that is so important because our profession had the opportunity to do it and refused.
Miss Mills, why do you think this thing is getting so much traction since it was released 10 or 11 days ago?
Well, I think more people are talking about it and questioning it. And we've all been siloed. And there's a bunch of us, a few that we're refusing to buy into the Kool-Aid. But the whole thing is we are now seeing the effects from human mutilation, and that can't be stopped in terms of those people who have been harmed, and the negligence involved is so over the top. You can't deny it anymore. You have to look at it now. So it's really fairly disgusting when 5,500 humans were mutilated permanently, and now we have to look at it. But the three things that in this particular introduction paper was you have to look at the profit, you have to look at the ideology behind it in order to get the profit. And the third thing is the active push. There was an active push, force-fed sex rejection procedures, all by design, all working together. This is not a one-off. This is largely at the feet, and I'm just going to say it, from the Biden administration, the DOJ, HHS, all the players, Medicare, Medicaid, big pharma, insurance companies, they were all in on it. You can't deny it anymore.
You've touched on my three topics. My answer to the question is, number one, it's a hot cultural topic. Now, every report's a hot topic to somebody, but this one has attention from a larger part of the crowd. Number two, the concrete evidence that they obtained from the defendants themselves. That's not unusual, but it's solid. And the third thing is this stuff is already in the hands of the Department of Justice. It's already been referred to these people. And because, number one, it's such a disgustingly relevant topic now in our world, even though people won't speak up as much as they should, it's getting traction for that reason. So, Dawn, what do you think the legal objective of the report is? Not the moral, but the legal objective here is.
I really do think it's going to come down to the clinical diagnosis and the billing realities that they are fitting. They're making up a diagnosis in order for reimbursement. It's coming back to a financial incentive without evidence base behind it. And legally, it's going to be a mess in that. How do we count the ways? When we talked about the suppression of empirical evidence in order to meet this narrative agenda, when that all gets exposed, not only is it fraud, it's just outright medical negligence and malpractice.
So, Ed, what do you think? What's the legal objective?
So I personally believe that the objective for our administration right now is to basically get rid of this ideology. That's the main top goal. And the way in order to do this is to then find out how did we actually get to a place where we are allowing for our medical system to harm and hurt our youth from this ideology. So what they actually had to do, because you can't fight ideology in a legal battle. You can't necessarily do that. I can't go into court and say my ideology is better than yours. You really can't fight that in a court of law. So what I think this does is actually goes, okay, well, what has supported the ideology that we can actually maybe go after? And what has supported the ideology is the fraud. And so that's what this whole report is trying to do. The report is trying to say, okay, you have lied in order to push this ideology. That's the weight of this. We all in this room understand the ideology is flawed. We all understand it's disgusting. It's gross. It goes against God's will. But there are people on this planet who don't agree with that. Fine. They have that free will. I can't fight them in law. But what I can do is say, in order for you to live out that ideology, you have had to harm people, hurt people, and lie about it. I can get you for those things. And that's what this report does. It goes after those areas. So hopefully it'll chop up the ideology, break it apart, and throw it away and spit it out. That's what we're hoping this report will do.
The funny part about a socialist society is that it needs a capitalist society to thrive in. It needs a host, and then when they kill the host, it'll die too. What you just outlined is the notion that I learned a long time ago, that you cannot legislate morality. You can't pass a law to make somebody believe in Jesus. And your second point is something Kathleen and I were talking about before you all joined in, and that is the fact that there are at least two major prongs of attack happening right now. One is the FTC versus WPATH case, and that's all about consumer fraud. The HHS Department of Justice issue here, it's not yet a case, but the issue, this report, is all about, as Don pointed out, medical fraud. Two different kinds of fraud. We're going to hit them high, we're going to hit them low. And that's the legal pursuit. It's the Al Capone tactic. We mentioned that earlier. If you can't get him on murder or bootlegging or prostitution or any number of other evils that he committed, let's get him on tax evasion.
Well, this really hits the heart of two concepts in my mind for mental health professionals. Okay. It's code of conduct, and it's also do no harm. You either believe in do no harm or not. And what side of the fence are you on? And how is that going to help you or hurt you? And then the code of conduct, if you're now subscribing to grooming your little one to think that they're something else, that code of conduct and your recommendations are going to haunt you for quite some time. This is being exposed by these two documents. Who were the players? Who were all involved? And then what happened after that? So, for instance, the epicenter of this whole thing is the Biden administration. The epicenter of the training is a WPATH. So we have deception and fraud all wrapped up in these two documents very nicely. And you're either going to wake up and change your ways, or there's no hope saving you. So I do think it's hitting the heart of mental health professionals. And, Don, I know, is all into academia. They need to clean up their act because they're not teaching a proper code of conduct. They're not teaching do no harm. What they're teaching is the ideology and what goes with it.
So let's do this. I know, Soad, you had an X post earlier this week, I think it was earlier this week, that outlined the report fairly well. So I'm guessing you have that in front of you, or at least in your own head.
I definitely not in my head this early in the morning, but I have it in front of me.
Tell us what you will about that list, and then we're going to go to Dawn, and I want you to apply everything you've heard, Dawn, to the world of academia.
Okay, so what basically, in a nutshell, what the report has exposed is that there was $50 million spent on puberty blockers that were billed under a endocrine diagnosis. So there was no gender dysphoria diagnosis at all in this. So $50 million was spent in a fraudulent diagnosis way to get people to have gender treatment, whatever you want to call it. Then there was $11 million fraudulently spent on puberty blockers for teens between 13 and 17 for a diagnosis that's called precocious puberty. Now, what precocious puberty means is essentially that you're going through puberty too early. So because you're going through puberty too early, then we need to give you puberty blockers to stop the process. However, these kids are between the ages of 13 and 17 that have been diagnosed this. That's when you go through puberty. It's not precocious. That's puberty. And so they've been lying and saying that it's precocious in order to get these kids on puberty blockers. So that's another fraudulent thing. Then they're saying that the WPATH training materials discussed using alternative diagnosis codes to help get gender-related care covered by insurance. WPATH is basically saying, hey, you're not going to be able to get this, so use these fraudulent codes. I hate that organization. I can't tell you how much I hate them. I know we're not supposed to pray to God for evil things, but I'm going to tell you that I do, specifically for them. The other thing was Texas Children's Hospital. They have already agreed to $10 million resolution, which means that they basically admitted that they have done fraud. So they had to pay $10 million back. And now the HHS has referred hospitals and clinics to federal investigators because of all the fraudulent based on all these reports. So that's in a nutshell.
Do we know how many hospitals or hospital systems?
No, we don't. It's basically going to be, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's not a specific, but they're showing that they've taken Texas as one. I think Texas was the main ones. And they basically said, since this is happening here, we need to then investigate and see how broad and how wide this has gone, how much is happening everywhere.
Yeah.
So that's where we're at. It's going to be a big case.
It is. I read somewhere, that's why I was asking, hoping you knew more than I did. And I don't think the list is in the report. The report's a report, but the documents that have been referred to the DOJ, that's a separate box of paper. But I read that there were 265, that number sticks in my head, 265 hospitals and or hospital systems that have been found to have done this, the fraudulent billing, and that's all been given to the Department of Justice for follow-up. So there's a whole lot of folks in hot water.
Well, also remember, too, Texas has been the leader in getting this process started. And usually what happens in Texas is going to follow the rest of the nation. So we're ahead of the game, but we have so much work to do with this.
Yeah, it's a Texas Children's Hospital, and it was for billing fraud, but part of the settlement was that they had to open up a detransitioning clinic and fund it for the next 5 years. And that's
the perpetrators who did it are now treating the detrans people.
No, they actually fired those doctors. They did. They fired the doctors that were doing that, and the clinic is staffed by others.
Well, it's just ironic, right?
They also did this in Ohio.
Right.
So Ohio and Texas, I want to say Tennessee, but there was only 2 instances of where what's happening in this report has already happened in the field, precedent. So there is precedent for what's about to happen to these other 265 hospitals and hospital systems. So let that make you feel better.
Dawn, what are your thoughts in terms of academia and stuff like that as an academic?
I mean, really, I think between the professional organizations and academia, which they feed off of each other, are going to be specific targets of this investigation because it's a primary pipeline. I mean, consider WPATH. You have to first get a mental health professional to write off that, yes, this is a thing, because medical doctors won't touch them without that mental health clearance. So they've used us as the gatekeeper of the process. And so when we have to look academic wise, I mean, when you get your new master's level student in there that may have come from an art or an English background that decided for a second career, and now they're for the first time looking at mental health issues, and you start teaching the ACA Code of Ethics as a standard of care and ethical guidelines. And I think where academia is going to get the biggest gut punch is, like you said, Texas is leading the way. And in Texas right now, to follow the ACA Code of Ethics puts you in danger of losing your license over BHEC laws and regulation over our license. Texas rejects the ACA Code of Ethics for all mental health clinicians. And when that is taught, I think we're going to end up starting to see, if this comes full circle, that where these clinicians are now getting in trouble with their license over following what their academic plan taught them to do, we're going to see a backlash across the board against the ACA, KCREP, and all of these I mean, think of all of the individual universities that could fall under a class action lawsuit. And to me, it's kind of inevitable that's where we'll end up if this investigation leads to where it's very likely to end up that across the board, there's just malpractice, whether it's medical, academic, because it all is very intertwined.
Do you think academia is talking about this, Dawn?
Absolutely
This
not.
document?
Well,
I mean,
it's only been out for less than 2 weeks, and I'm currently on sabbatical because I've just about had enough of mental health in academia because it is just toxic. Honestly, I have stepped back just because of how bad it's gotten, and I don't want to participate in that process. So I'd love to reconnect with people that are having this conversation, if it's even a conversation, which I highly doubt, because we are so driven by KCRET. Even, some of the largest Christian universities in our country that have gone the way of KCRET are now complicit in the participation of these issues. And I just can't anymore.
So Ed,
I
let's
wanna
go back to your list. Yeah, go ahead.
I want to actually touch, you brought up like the other states. So yeah, you are correct. It was Cleveland Clinic that had to pay $308,000 plus a $2 million for detransition care. And then Connecticut Children's, they were the third hospital that had to pay a $500,000. So 3
Okay.
states so far.
What else is on your list?
As far as what's on the HHS report, those are the main topics that were brought up. As far as, let me just really quickly look at this real quick. Okay, so for me, what Kathleen had said earlier about the do no harm, we're going to have people argue with us as to what justifies do no harm. The left is going to believe that you do no harm by allowing people to be comfortable in the sex that they want to be in. That is their position, and it's always their position. Our position is obvious. Our position is God gave us our sex, and we stay in that sex. We can't transition. We can't change it. And what we have to do is kind of figure out what makes us uncomfortable in our own bodies. So again, you can't fight the ideology. You can't fight the morals, like you said. I genuinely can't fight what do no harm actually means. So what do we have to do? We have to back up and we have to look at, okay, what paths does our side take to do no harm, and what paths does the left side take to do no harm? The path that the left takes is that they're saying if we don't do this, they're going to commit suicide. They're going to have that famous line that they taught us, a dead daughter or a live son. That's what the left says. The problem with that is the statistics, the research has shown that's not true. The research has actually shown that, wait a minute, when they actually transitioned, the suicide rate was exactly the same, if not worse. So it's not actually helping you. And the do no harm tactic isn't working. It's debunked. And what our side has shown is that there are detransitioners, and people who detransition actually have a better life, feel more satisfied. Research is showing that. So we have to look at the actual path to these do no harms. We can't exactly tackle the do no harm itself, but everything always falls on the side of God. Can't argue him. A lot of times I'll tell people science was created to prove that there is God. Science was not created to show that there wasn't a God. If anything, science shows the path straight to God. So they can talk all their ideology all they want, but if we dig deep and see how we actually get to that path of their ideology, it falls apart immediately. To speak to you, Dawn, real quick, I'm hoping, and I have really been emphasizing more and more these past few weeks and really trying to take it to heart for myself as well, is that more of us on this side do go back into academia and do actually take more leadership roles in our field. Because sure, we can scream and shout from the outside, but these people are still in charge. The APAs are still in charge. WPATH is still in charge. These credentialing places are still in charge, and they are saturated with leftists. So I am hoping that more of us kind of go, okay, enough with me. Forgive me for using this as an example. Enough with me being on podcasts. Enough with me writing stuff on Substack. I need to actually get into these places. And I have been looking to see, okay, I'm in California. In California, we have the Association for Marriage and Family Therapists camp. How can I get involved in that? Can I actually get people to vote for me? And honestly, I think because everything's changing, that I might to get people to go, wait a minute, we might need some conservatives. We might need to look at this. And things like these reports help me, help us, because it's like, okay, the leftists can step back and go, okay, maybe we're doing something wrong if we're getting in trouble. Maybe we need to hear the other side so that we stop getting in trouble. And we really need to start sending our troops out, our soldiers out, to start getting into these organizations and changing the way from the ground up. I love that we've done all of this talking and yelling and shouting on the outside, but we really need to get into the heart of things and make some changes. That's what I think needs to happen as well.
Dawn, want to follow that?
She's not wrong. The problem I think is getting very well identified. We have come down to outright lies, fabrication, fraud, manipulation, and harm to people. I don't have a tenure in academia, and honestly, I don't want it. I recently saw Kathleen attacked on a conservative group page about your organization, and I'm just like, because this particular professor is like, I don't want to go to yours because I want to present because I'm seeking, and I'm just like,
don't worry, she's not in the group anymore, so don't worry about it.
I have been in that swamp. I want my soul intact, because I think there's a certain part of academia you either have to sell it but then again, I've been in that enough to know that right now would do further harm for me to keep going. Now, if I step back and catch my breath and you guys go in with your fresh vision and things can change, it might be safe to go back in the water. But where I find I could make the most impact in this moment is at a state level, because our state is already on board and moving full speed ahead. If that means a board positions opens up, maybe I apply. The thought of that turns my stomach, but it seems rational to me that that's a possibility. Where I find in the most immediate impact that I can have is I miss teaching more than anything. But what I found when I was in academia, I was not allowed to teach. I was allowed to follow the protocol. And when I disagreed with the protocol or pointed out that protocol we're teaching in this class actually violates 5 states in their counseling codes, and there is a liability factor if you don't allow me to say, heads up, if you're in these 5 states, you might want to make sure you know your state laws, because ACA is not going to and it just became so much that when they asked me to lie to students, I'm like, I'm out. So where I think my most immediate impact can be is in supervision, because I love teaching. If I get state associates that are working on their LPC license, my first speech to them when they walk in my doors, everything you just went through in your grad program, I need you to leave in the trash can at the door, because they taught you the ACA Code of Ethics, and you will lose your license in Texas if you follow that. So I really have to kind of start over, and none of them are happy about it. What do you mean? That's not accurate. It's not accurate for Texas. And I'm sorry you paid your graduate student loans to pay for something that is not accurate in your state. And this is where I do foresee coming down a backlash of class action lawsuits starting to line up when this all comes to pass. But my immediate impact is in the retraining of people in Texas, what the BHEC laws require of you to keep your license and ethically practice in Texas. That's where I feel like I can make a difference right now, because there's so much that they have to unlearn to be ethical in their license.
We do know that the legacy associations are tanking because they're going to die on this hill. We do know that the composite of some of these legacy associations are just, get this one, Dawn, and you won't be surprised, professors and grad students. Very few licensed professional, fully licensed people belong to the legacy association. Let that help you.
Yes.
That's part of the problem with the indoctrination at the school level. But since I'm not smart enough and I don't have a PhD and I haven't gone through all that stuff, I can't teach at anywhere. So my advocacy is directly with the state boards, which in my personal opinion, in the last probably 5 years, we are definitely being heard and we are quashing the other side by being present. And I think if more people will do that, Dawn is the greatest example. She did not want to do that. And now she can't wait, which is academia and being in private practice and being a supervisor and mentoring many people. Perfect combo to present to public comments to the board who's full of professors. They can't deny what she says because they haven't lived in her shoes as a business entrepreneur owner.
Kathleen, this report is out now, and the facts are very clear. Don't you see the professional associations waking up on Monday morning going, oh, we were wrong. We need to backtrack and update our policies?
Absolutely not. They're dug in. As a matter of fact, the APA is still dug in. We do know that our state association, not AMP, but TCA, which is the Texas Counseling Association, they're still dug in on the gender debacle. They're still teaching how to navigate what Soad was talking about, how to manipulate the diagnosis and give a false diagnosis in order to get the process started. Think about that. They're still being indoctrinated on how to circumvent the criteria that you were trained in school to do. Don't lie on your case notes, to all of a sudden fabricate and lie and manipulate the case notes so they don't get in trouble. They know they're in trouble. They're actually teaching counselors how to manipulate their case notes so they won't get in trouble.
They're in a position where they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't. If they publicly admit, we were wrong and backtrack, which would be the moral thing to do, from a legal standpoint, that's an admission which could be used against them in a court of law if it comes to that point. We haven't talked about this in a couple of weeks, but the FTC case against WPATH is pretty damning. We've done some serious research into this, and we've got one more podcast in a series of 3 to do next week.
What's really interesting? The cognitive dissonance.
Given the damning evidence that they have against WPATH is continuing on with their annual conference here in a month or two. And what are they going to be doing at this conference? Promoting their standard of care version 8, because that's their product. You don't have a sales conference and not have a product. That's their only product, and they'll be pushing it. If the TC is coming after you in court because they're claiming that your standard of care is based on fraudulent claims, why would you hold a 2 or 3 or 4 day conference and promote those same things? Well, they have to.
This administration is going to come and go. And I just read somewhere in some social media town that they are actually ramping up the whole gender ideology for the next 10 years. They are digging their heels in because what they believe is once this administration's out, because they do believe in 2028, they will be out, then they get back in and they can then redirect and completely go back to what their agenda was to just trans everybody. So in their mind, this is just a moment in time. We just have to live out the next 2 years until Trump is gone, and then conservatives are quiet again. That's how they're processing this. And you know what? To a degree, they're right. If we lose 2028, we are royally screwed. We are going right back to where we were with Biden. They have a plan. They have set up the next 10 years to push this ideology. So we have to make sure that they stay out of the office, out of the administration. And we actually have to also continue doing these reports, but then actually prosecute. Because what helps is when you get, and we know this from just what we see in the Supreme Court, when we look at court cases and trial, people use other court cases to help and defend their court case that they're bringing to the judge.
Precedent.
So if we actually go and charge people and win, then we have that precedent. We can then say, okay, because of that case, all these other cases we can win as well. But until we actually get some of these things in court, nothing can happen. And we have 2 years to do that. We have 2 years to really get people in court, convict them, jail them, hopefully, And then maybe then we can continue this path. But unless we do that, we are going to be in trouble in 2 years if they win again.
Well, on that point, the Electoral College matters, and you don't win an election. It used to be you had to have Ohio to win a presidential election. Now that has shifted to you got to have Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania is about that far from flipping to red. And if we can claim Pennsylvania, we'll all be long gone before the Dems, if they even exist, win another election. So what does this all mean for the mental health counselor, this report in particular? It's not directly aimed at mental health counselors, but they're mentioned in here numerous times. What does it
Well,
mean for the counselor, Soad?
You know, it's hard because as a counselor, as a therapist, I don't work with insurance. So I have a little more freedom to work with my clients and and obviously I'm a conservative, so I kind of know how to work around it. Let's say I'm not. Let's say I'm a leftist and I take insurance. There is a little bit of a push, kind of like what this report is suggesting and saying, for me to get people into psychiatry, to then get them into medication, and then to be able to myself get reimbursed for the practice and the therapies that I'm doing. I am hoping that this report, I highly doubt it when it comes to a leftist, but I am hoping that this report would just kind of pause that pattern, would just kind of be like, okay, well, if I know the psychiatrist is going to get in trouble for prescribing anything to my 14-year-old who's going through actual just puberty and it's not precocious, then maybe I would step back and say, you're not going to be able to get puberty. So let's just kind of work out what's going on. That's what I'm hoping will happen. That maybe instead of just pushing you straight to psychiatry to get medication, maybe you and I can do some actual talk therapy to see what's happening with you. Why do you feel this way? Because I think a lot of times what's happening is a counselor is just going, I am just that one session away from this child getting to a psychiatrist and getting the medical help they need to transition. I think that's how the counselor thinks right now. With this report, I'm hoping the counselor goes, well, I'm not going to be able to refer them to the psychiatrist because they're not going to be able to medically transition. So I'm going to have to actually do some work with this person. Basically, they're going to have to stop being so effing lazy. I almost cussed, you guys. I'm sorry. Effing lazy and do some work in the therapy room. So that's what I'm hoping will happen.
Which is why I turn on the Tabrizi filter when we started recording.
I stopped myself.
Well, she gets to say words because it's too early in the morning for her right now.
It doesn't count before 9 o'clock California time. Doesn't count.
There you
So
go.
what you just said, Soad, is that you're hopeful that the personal cash flow considerations of an individual counselor will alter his behavior patterns or her behavior patterns.
I'm hoping that they would take pause because they would know that the psychiatrist is not going to actually be able to give them the puberty blocker or whatever it is that they want to give them medically because of this report. So that they would stop and go, okay, well, what's the point of me sending them there when I can see that obviously this child is just having gender dysphoria, not any kind of puberty issue, that they would then actually just do some work with the person. Yeah.
Dawn,
God
how is this report going to affect the mental health counselor?
My hope, which is not great because of where the field is right now, but I would like to think that the individual clinician would at some point come to grips that we have got to separate clinical care from advocacy and ideology. Academia tells you they are one and the same, but they are not. And we're starting to see that. The federal government can do a look at the research and see, you know what, we're promoting and elevating this research, but this research over here exists, but we're burying and suppressing it to an unrealistic promotion of this that is not accurate. I think if academia and the individual clinician that's out of it can start to say, wait a minute, I've been deceived. There's been a lot of manipulation here. What are we really looking at? Because there is the research that shows that if gender confusion exists and you just leave them alone, over 90% of them land in the right place. But the thing is, we've got historical basic counseling theory and Erik Erikson, we've got 75 years of history of what normal developmental processes are. And the ages of 12 to 19 is the classic identity versus confusion. It is normal And if you leave them alone, I remember in high school, who do I want to be? It's the most natural question in the world. Well, at one point, my 13, 14-year-old brain wanted to be popular, wanted to be a cheerleader. So I tried that out. It was fun for a season, but maybe not exactly what I thought it was. And well, maybe I want to be an athletic jock. Yeah, had no talent for that. I kind of found out that as often as I went to the library, I'm actually a nerd. I'm a geek. I loved the library. I loved research and I found my place, But I tried on every outfit I could of who am I? Who do I? The most natural thing in the world. And the vast majority, and of course, we're out here in West Texas. It's not like I have an overwhelming number of kids that think they're trans, though I've had a few. 100% of them were junior high school students. And it was during COVID. And we started to see how the targeting and the algorithm and all of that began targeting them when they're isolated from their peers, when you've got very specific targeting. One of my clients that first came, I think I'm trans. Really? So, what made you start thinking that? Well, I was on YouTube and Pride Month is coming up and they had all of these videos at the top and one of them said, "Are you trans?" And so I clicked on it and I'm like, and there goes the algorithm because every video that was recommended and suddenly they were absolutely convinced they were trans, but they were targeted. They target that 12 to 19-year-old crowd. Like you say, not precocious puberty. It's a 100% natural, normal developmental process. But then our profession comes in. Okay, now we're going to offer you CEUs on how to manipulate, lie, and fraudulently get what you think they should have. And with that particular client, the discussion went, okay, so are you allowed to date right now? Oh, no, I'm not allowed to date until I'm 16. Okay, you're 13 years old. So you are spending so much of your time right now stressing over something you're not even going to be able to experience for 3 years. What would happen if we just figured out how to get your locker open? And they just literally, you could see it. My gosh, that would be so cool. I mean, you can't figure out the combination lock right now, and that stresses you out because you've got lunch detention because you were late to your class 3 days because you couldn't get your locker open. You can't date for 3 years. What if we just figure out? And I mean, just the total relief of like, I don't have to worry. No, it's just that targeting of going after the most vulnerable among us.
That's the same thing my dad told me. You're not dating until you can get your damn locker unlocked. I was like 19 before I ever, anyway. All right, Miss Mills, what do you think this report's going to have? What kind of impacts it's going to have on the mental health profession, individual counselors, and think like a lawyer?
Well, I was going to go in a different way, but
We'll go in a different way. Go wherever you want to go.
Okay. Well, first of all, if counselors will please try to realize we have never been in what is called a free medical market, which supports the point that Dawn raised. You have to do this research, but you can't supplement it with the other side. So we have been indoctrinated that counselors need to toe the line in whatever counseling genre comes down the pike. So you got to start questioning, is this a lie too? What else have we been lied about? And being critically thinking through, well, is EMDR something to look at that might not be helpful? Are the books that are being written, Body Keeps Score, stuff like that? What else have we been lied to based on a narrow view of research? And as a counselor, as a professional, you've got to stop being afraid of the white coats that are dispensing the petroleum-based synthetic medication, okay? And the counselors have to stand strong and push back on, well, that's not in my scope of practice, so go see the psychiatrist. No, this is in your scope of practice. And you need to teach your person, your human that you're trying to help, what questions do I need to ask, and allow them to push back. So don't feel like you're a victim and you have this narrow little scope. What this is saying to me is like, my scope has been this big the whole time, and I've been lied to because I need to know those contraindications of all the medications. This is clear. This is totally clear. It's a total manipulation of the insurance. It's a racket. People are making big money off of this stuff, and our humans are getting sicker. You've got to do that research now. Why are they sicker than they were 10 years ago?
I think it needs to be emphasized why it's such a problem that these children are not getting diagnosed with gender dysphoria, and instead they're fraudulently getting diagnosed with these medical issues. And the reason why is because what you guys just discussed. There is a line between helping someone in the clinical office versus a white coat. And since insurance wants to pay for medical issues, counselors are just saying, okay, well, it's not a gender dysphoria. We're going to call it something else. Give it to the white coats. Let them deal with it. Let them handle this. It's like, no, stop. It is gender dysphoria. Don't give them to the white coats. This has nothing to do with medical stuff. We need to work on the mind. That is your field. That is what you are capable of doing. You have been given you've gone to school for this. And I say this often, we are some of the most laziest people in our field. Not present party, but others that are in the field that just do not want to do the work. If they can get a free hall pass that says, oh, we can give it to a medical person, great, go there, take care of that. Look at me, how awesome I am. No, you actually have to do the work with this person. They have gender dysphoria. You need to work this out with them. Stop giving it a medical diagnosis. Stop saying this is something for the doctors to deal with. It's not. And we really, really, really have to understand that this is something we are very capable of working out with our clients. We have been told and taught, just like you said, Kathleen, that it's not within our scope and we need to hand it off and pass it down. That's not true. That is not true at all.
Which is not to say that a mental issue cannot be directly a result of some physical issue. What I hear you saying is let's not default to a medical issue and refer it on in the interest of promoting an ideology.
100%. It could be a hormonal issue. It could be your food intake. Absolutely. It could be any of this. It could be the air you breathe. Whatever it is, we still have that power. We still have the actual tools that we need to look at our client. We know our client the best and go, okay, let me rule out everything before I send you to the white coat. The capability of saying, hey, you need to go get some blood work done. Let's do that. Let's do some blood work and see how your hormone levels are. Let's look at your food diary. What are you actually eating? What are you taking in every single day? Let's actually look at what supplements you're taking. What medications are you on? Antibiotics all day long, every single day? Are you getting UTIs all the time? What is actually going on with you that you possibly have this gender dysphoria? If we have ruled everything out, then, okay, maybe I need to then give it to somebody else. The scope isn't mine. But I can almost guarantee we can handle that in our own office. We have all the tools necessary.
Dawn's going to bust a gut if she doesn't jump in here.
If you look historically at the counseling profession not from the earliest beginnings where we started out as career counselors, but as we began to progress into truly, I don't even like the term mental health, but soul care. There's a good term. Body, soul, and spirit. Our original documents before ACA was ACA, and I forget what it was called before then, but it said we are a wellness-based profession. We are looking at body, soul, and spiritual interventions for the human condition. And where that started to drift off, again, is the sellout or the hijacking, or maybe a little of both, of the profession is when they try to medicalize everything to justify insurance. Look through the DSM. It is insane. What started out as like a 12-page book in DSM-1, we're over 500 pages now. And they have pathologized the human experience. Whereas when I was a kid, thumb sucking or nail biting was a nasty habit. Your grandmother would smack your handful and say, stop. That's a nasty habit. Now it is literally in the DSM as an anxiety disorder, this specific type. Holy cow. Bedwetting is now a psychiatric condition where it used to be go to your medical doctor, rule out a kidney dysfunction, a bladder infection. We have either been hijacked or absolutely sold out. Worst case scenario, both. for the financial gain of the reimbursement, but yet the research, if we're going to go evidence-based, the research shows that 15 minutes in natural sunlight is as effective as an antidepressant without the side effects. And if we can get back to a wellness-based model, I think insurance should still have to cover it because it's evidence-based.
This report contains the testimony of 8 or 9 transitioners or detransitioners, victims of this way of thinking. And the subject of suing the people who did this to them comes up. So let's sit on that for a minute. If I'm detransitioning and I am convinced that informed consent was not a thing, I was lied to, my parents were lied to, I'm suffering all of these ills, the neurological damage, and everything else that goes along with it, and I decide to sue somebody. Who am I suing, Kathleen?
Everybody that had anything to do to participate in the destruction of my body.
Does that include mental health counselors, and why?
Yes. The letter writing or the grooming in the sessions, the conduct of the counselor here. Yeah. Childs v. Salazar is pretty clear. You can say whatever you want to in the 10 by 10, but if it becomes a conduct issue here in the state of Texas, you could get in trouble with that. Not by just the board, but at some point, just look forward to getting that huge lawsuit paper given by the guy with a lot of tattoos, and that'll change your mind that'll wake you up.
So if you've written a letter, or even if you haven't written a letter, but your case notes indicate that you had an intent to facilitate, as it's legally stated here in Texas, you could potentially be in hot water if somebody that you facilitated or wrote a letter for had either the hormones and the puberty blockers or that and surgery. They decide to sue somebody, you're in the scope.
Yep.
You're in the crosshairs.
I'm the gatekeeper. And to fraudulently do your case notes the way that people are being now taught is part of this document, Wolves in White Coats. They're talking about fraud and deception of diagnosis and what they put in the case notes. So don't mistake, counselor, that you're going to be free from this because you didn't prescribe. You are the gatekeeper to get this whole thing started.
Amen. Amen.
I looked it up in the thesaurus under gatekeeper, and scapegoat is another term for gatekeeper. It's a legal thing. All right. Here's my 3 wrap-ups, and we're going to let Soad. You get the final word today just because.
She had to get up in the morning.
Yeah,
all right.
I'll promise I'll try not to cuss.
Here's the 3 things I come up with out of this conversation. Number 1, you cannot legislate morality. Number 2, you can win the debate with a leftist. That's not hard to do, but it won't change the minds of the indoctrinated. You can win the debate, but doesn't mean they'll change their mind. And number 3, we're going to win all this eventually because their love for money will be their downfall. They love money more than they love their ideology. Let that soak in. All right, so Ed, take it away.
My whole thing is, and my whole push is, and since the start of me coming out openly about being a conservative, is that I want to continue to encourage you don't even have to be a conservative, just other clinicians who are morally sound, who love God and believe in Him, to continue to please stand firm on what is right, on the morals of what you actually do. Sure, we learn a lot in our books. We learn a lot in class. We learn a lot about science. We learn everything. We learn about the academia of it all. Yes, soak that in. But like you said, Phil, question everything. Question everything. I just came to the realization just recently that addiction is not a disease. You can fight me on that all you want. That's fine. I don't care. But that is what I've come to. I had to stop and go, wait a minute. If I don't believe in chemical imbalances, what else was I taught that was wrong? And that's how I opened the door to the addictions and many other things that I was like, whoa, wait a minute. I was taught wrong. Question everything. Do not sway. Do not get lazy. Do not relax in your beliefs. We need you to stand firm, and we need you to be very loud and vocal about what you believe. Clients are getting harmed, and they're getting harmed because of an ideology that is louder than us. And we need to fight back, and we need to push back with our voices, with the positions that we hold, We need to get into office. We need to get into the boards. We need to get into academia. We need to spread like wildfire ourselves. Please do not give up. That's my biggest push. Do not give up on this. Even though the left believes this administration will go away and we will then also go away, we have to be loud, so loud that they continue to be afraid of us, because I think that's what's happening. I think they're starting to get a little afraid. And I love that. I want them to fear us. I want them to believe and understand we're not going anywhere. We're going to stand firm. One thing that they're doing, Kathleen, you brought something up that made me go, oh my God. They believe that if we provide informed consent, that's conversion therapy. If I just provide for them and say, this is this and this is this, to them, that's conversion therapy. To them, that's like, no, you can't do that. You can't. We need to give more informed consent. Give both sides. They want to take the pill, explain to them what that looks like. They still decide to go take the pill, that's on them, fine. But you are, like Kathleen said, you are the gatekeeper. You are the start of this path. Be loud, be vocal, don't give up, stand firm, get encouragement from people like us. Join our groups, join the associations that you need. You need people behind you to encourage you. We are here for you. Just don't give up. Please, 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 please. They dig in their heels, we dig in deeper. Please don't give up.
And so, Ed, it is perfectly acceptable to pray for God to deal with evil. Kathleen, this is the part where we say something about the Austin BBQ Club. Link is in the show notes. And also a quick mention of the upcoming conference. Give me one good reason why anybody should attend this conference this year.
Well, we're talking about informed consent.
I love
And
it how
why
we're on
that's
the same
important,
page.
because we know that nobody else is doing it. And we're the gatekeeper. We need to get our humans well, and they're not getting well. So informed consent you'll love it. And we're going to have a lot of naturopathic topics, and it's a great fellowship. You said one, but I can't just give you one.
No,
Sorry.
2 or 3 is acceptable. And we're going
It's
to,
a lot of love.
you'll really understand the 6 pillars when we get done with you. Ladies, thanks for
Yes.
doing this. We're out of time and I need you to be good.